It's rare to get an insider's view on the taboo subjects I often tackle on this show. But today, former Senator and Florida Governor Bob Graham joined me to talk about the most pressing policy decisions he was involved with during his 18 years in the Senate. Graham served as the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee during 9/11. He was the chairperson for the BP Deepwater Horizon Oil Spill National Commission, and he was a member of the CIA External Advisory Board. I first asked Senator Graham about the current government shutdown and how it compares to the one 17 years ago while he was in office.
The shutdown in the mid-90s was based over budget matters. So you had a disagreement over numbers. That's relatively easy to compromise. One party says 10, the other says 8, you agree on 9. This, however, is much more fundamental. It goes to the question of the role of government, particularly in a sensitive area such as health care. I hope the parties can come together, but I think this could be a more extended closure of government than we experienced 20 or so years ago.
And you've said that you're convinced that, quote, there was a direct line between at least some of the terrorists who carried out the September 11th attacks and the government of Saudi Arabia. What evidence do you have to back up that claim?
Well, as an example, there's very extensive evidence of the situation in San Diego where 2 of the hijackers, the first 2 to have entered the country, were given extensive assistance, financial support, anonymity by persons with close ties to Saudi institutions and the government of Saudi Arabia. My suspicion is that similar relationships existed in other places in the country. There's some evidence coming out that one of those may have been a training ground for 3 of the aviators near Sarasota, Florida. So I think the questions are, what was the full extent of the role of the Saudis in 9/11? Why would the Saudis have been involved? And third, why has our government gone to such lengths to cover up the Saudi involvement?
Well, let's turn those questions around and back on you. Why do you think that Saudi Arabia wasn't fully explored? And what does it say that one of our biggest allies in this war on terror is potentially involved in carrying out 9/11?
Well, that's still a mystery. There are a lot of theories as to what it may have been. Of course, the United States, since World War II, has had a special relationship with Saudi Arabia in which we provide them some security assistance. They have provided us a reliable source of petroleum. The close ties between particularly the Bush administration and the Saudi royal family is another possible reason. There may well be some other reasons that we don't know.
And what was the reason told to you when you inquired about this over and over again?
No answer.
Well, you were adamantly against the Iraq War because you thought it would divert attention from Afghanistan at the time, but considering what a disaster Afghanistan has become, do you regret supporting that intervention?
No, I think Afghanistan was like Pearl Harbor. We were attacked, thousands of Americans as well as many people from other countries were killed. That is the kind of provocation that justifies a military response. My concern with Iraq is that it constituted a diversion away from achieving the goal of completing the military mission in Afghanistan, and in my judgment, has substantially extended the duration of our involvement in Afghanistan. And it was predicated largely on the allegation that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that were capable of being utilized on very short notice. I was very suspicious as to whether those weapons existed or not, and I believe the failure to find any such weapons vindicated my suspicions.
Yeah, but if you said yourself that Saudi Arabia was potentially complicit in the attacks, why target Afghanistan? I mean, just to find one man?
Well, we targeted Afghanistan because that was where the entity, led by one man, but with thousands of followers, and many of those being war-hardened veterans of the war in Afghanistan against Russia, and incidents such as the attack against 2 U.S. embassies in Africa. That was the place from which the attack against the United States had emanated. Thus became, I believe, the appropriate target of our attack. But there was no relationship between Iraq and the attack against the United States on 9/11. Turned out to be no weapons of mass destruction, no justification for our diverting attention from Afghanistan, where the real war was being waged, to Iraq, where a war under false pretenses was about to start.
Senator, the CIA maintains that you were briefed in 2002 about waterboarding and other enhanced interrogation techniques used by the Bush administration on terrorism suspects. Why didn't you speak up at the time about this issue?
I'm smiling because I was asked that exact question within an hour of our conversation. I'm holding up a notebook. Since 1977, I've carried a notebook in which I inscribe, among other things, what I do throughout the day. When these charges were made that I had been briefed on enhanced interrogation, I asked the CIA to give me the dates when those briefings took place. They gave me 4 dates. I went back to my notebooks, a contemporaneous record of what I've done, and I found that on 3 of the 4 dates there was no briefing, and on the 4th date there was a CIA briefing, but it was on a subject other than enhanced interrogation. When I presented this information to the CIA and the FBI, they determined that I probably was not at any of those briefings, and they have stopped representing that I had prior knowledge of U.S. intentions in terms of enhanced interrogation.
Well, thank you for clearing that up, Senator. I mean, considering how we now know that the torture was systematic, authorized from the top down, do you think that the Bush administration officials who did this should be prosecuted for war crimes?
That's for somebody else to decide. I think it was a very bad decision for the United States. I've never been convinced that we got any positive benefit out of it, and we sullied our fundamental values enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. Evidence derived from torture is evidence that is suspect as to its credibility.
And unfortunately, a lot of that torture testimony is a lot of what the precursors for the 9/11 Commission report. Let's move on to BP, Senator Graham. You were the chairperson on the National Commission on the BP Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Who bears the majority of the responsibility for this spill, and how do you react to the news that BP is still fighting to limit payouts to victims?
Well, I think the primary responsibility is BP, also Transocean, which was the owner of the drilling rig, and Halliburton, which was responsible for pouring the concrete, which was the initial point of failure on the Deepwater Horizon platform. As to why is BP resisting payments, I happened to be with one of their attorneys recently, and it was his contention that many of the claims that have been made are claims that have limited linkage to BP's negligence that led to the spill, and therefore were not eligible to be participants in the spill. That's something that our judicial system is going to have to sort through and decide who has a legitimate claim and what is the dollar value of that claim.
And given that Halliburton knowingly destroyed evidence and BP was criminally negligent, why are these companies still being awarded government contracts?
I'm not certain what kind of government contracts any of the three are receiving. Of course, a company like Halliburton is in a lot of businesses and probably would be inappropriate to debar them from any participation in government contracts because of their inappropriate actions on the Deepwater Horizon.
But don't you think that the Pentagon should stop getting Premier Oil and Gas from the very company that poisoned the entire Gulf of Mexico? I mean, do you think enough has been done to punish these corporations from the government?
They've been punished quite severely to date, and with more still to come. So I don't think anyone is going to be accused of being excessively lenient with BP, Transocean, or Halliburton.
What were those punishments?
Very severe fines. In the case of BP, they were denied access to new leases in the Gulf of Mexico. Those are actions which have significant economic consequences.
Well, unfortunately, Halliburton's stocks actually went up in light of their admitting to criminal negligence and actually destruction of evidence in light of that spill. Thank you so much for all of your time. Do you want to say a final word?
The stock market, I think it has its own value system and motivations.
Indeed it does. Thank you so much. Senator Bob Graham, really appreciate your insight and your time.
Thank you very much.